Now before we go any further, when we start drawing on these lines, I want to establish a grid pattern. A grid is something you really need when you're doing construction drawings, because you can measure back and forth to the grid lines. It's a lot cleaner than choosing walls that can move. You know, as your construction progresses, walls might be out of place, and you don't want to measure to those walls to indicate other measurements that might not. It could snowball into mismeasuring the construction. So you choose a grid line, establish that grid line in space, and you can always reference back to that grid line as you're constructing. So we're going to input some grid lines here. Now my layers, properties. I'm going to create a new layer and call it grids. I just right click there, grids, and choose a layer, color, we'll just say orange. We don't want this to be continuous because that might cause confusion. We're going to have to load some new line types. Get dash dot. We'll try that one out for our grid line. Okay, one thing I forgot was to change the line weight, as we talked about. I'm just going to make this a 0.5. Okay, now if I create these grid lines, I'll zoom in here a little bit. Say the center of these columns seems like an important area. Stretch this down here. Okay, it should line up with this exterior column on the back. It doesn't exactly, because I think our scan might be a little rotated. We're just gonna go with it for now. I'm gonna copy this line, this grid line. Maybe my snaps are off. Object snaps. They are. I'm going to copy this over. To all of the areas I think might be really important that are consistent with floor 1, floor 2, and floor 3, which are going to be these exterior columns and main walls, like around the stairways. So these are going to be my grids to follow. I'm going to make some horizontal grids now. You can see our document is rotated, so this isn't super accurate, but we're using it as a reference anyway, so it should be okay. If this were as-built in the field, we would make sure that this was completely accurate, but for this assignment, we're okay to guess a bit. Okay, now that's my grid work. Now I'm going to copy all of these over. Maybe I should establish some titles first. Just creating a circle. I'm going to put it at the top of my grid line. and I'm going to include some text. Text is going to have to be enlarged. Call that A. It's really tiny. Select it. Go back to your properties. The text height is 1/8 inch, and we're in model space, so it's an actual 1/8 inch. We're going to say 1 foot. See what that comes up with. Still a little small. Okay, that's grid A. Now you've noticed that the grid line that I set up in the layers properties was yellow, or orange it was, and I'm drawing in a different layer. I'm drawing in the underlay air layer, which I created for these scans. So I need to change that layer so I can hide my scans later in the underlayer level. There's a lot of layers. But I want to select these and put them on my grid. So I'm going to select it and change this layer to grids. Now you can see my line type and my color has changed. Now I should have done that initially, but I wanted to show you that you can use this match property tool, that I can match this property and select really quickly all of these grid lines. I don't want to select my image below, so I'm going to select these one by one. I'm also going to do the same for this A and this circle. However, I don't want my circle to have that line type, so I'm going to override, even though it's going to stay on level grid, on layer grid, I'm going to choose the line type to not be by layer, but to be continuous. So it looks better. Now I can copy this over to all of my other grids. I can rename them, letters across the top, maybe numbers down the side. I won't go through that whole process. We'll skip ahead and continue with the next lesson or the next instruction.